At a time when children were being taken advantage of in the workforce, New York City newsboys defied their superiors and went on strike for fair wages and treatment in 1899. By refusing to buy or sell papers for 2 weeks, the newsies caught the attention of many. Light was shed on their poor working conditions and measly pay, which helped put forth many child labor welfare laws in the U.S. But how did it come to this? The development of industries, which began in the 1870s, reached a very fast pace as the century started coming to an end. As industrialization quickened, new kinds of businesses took hold of the economy. These businesses mass-produced and mass-distributed customer goods. One of these types of businesses was newspapers. Newspapers were one of the most important ways of communicating, as radios and TVs didn't exist. As people relied on newspapers for information more, the need for newspaper workers increased throughout the decades. You see, during this time, many homeless kids and orphans made their living by working odd jobs, which were often low-paying. About 10,000 boys and some girls worked as newsies who sold newspapers on the streets. Ages varied, but most were somewhere between 4 and 18 years old. These newsies worked directly for the newspaper publishers, and they were the main distributors of the paper. Newsies would normally buy papers that were priced at 50 cents per 100. That might not sound too expensive, but to the poor newsboys, it was a little pricey. They would then work all day hawking the newspapers, trying to resell them. The newspaper publishers wouldn't buy back unsold papers, so the boys had to hurry to get them all sold. Normally they'd profit half a cent per paper, and then after that the money was theirs, but they had to pay for other things like food and in some cases housing. So if a newsie wasn't able to sell all his papers, then he would lose certain privileges, such as the privilege to eat food and buy more newspapers the next day. Because of this, newsies were often seen selling late into the night. This life was very hard, because as this continued, the newspaper publishers got richer, and those who were very poor, like newsies, struggled to get out of the poverty cycle. The Spanish-American War had been raging for a few months. The public interest on this topic was high, so more people bought more newspapers. Many publishers, such as Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst, saw the increased sale and opportunities it brought. Without warning, nearly all the newspapers in New York upped their prices from 50 cents per 100 to 60. And even though the price was raised, the increased newspaper sales assured that the newsies would still be able to make a modest profit. But after the war ended and sales dropped, many newspapers lowered their prices. However, The World, a paper run by Joseph Pulitzer, and The Journal, run by Hearst, did not lower their prices, hoping to bring in some extra cash. This led to some tension. On July 18, 1899, newsboys were furious, as they rightfully should have been, as they found that they were given less papers than they paid for. This caused a racket among the group, and they then took a stand by declaring that they would be striking against The World and The Journal. The newsboys then overturned the wagon the delivery man was in and stole the remaining papers. The next day, many newsies gathered together to form their own union. They told the newspaper moguls, Pulitzer and Hearst, that they would not buy their papers until they agreed to roll back the prices. Pulitzer and Hearst refused, sure that a group of newsboys wouldn't be able to do anything detrimental to their business. With this, the newsies boycotted the World and Journal papers for the next 2 weeks. Cries of,
"All about the newsboy strike!"
and
"We sell 'em all except the World and Journal!"
filled the streets. One of the biggest figures of the strike was a boy named Louis Kid Blank Belletti. He was 18 years old at this time, and he was the co-president of the Newsies strike, along with his friend David Simmons. Now, as you can imagine, there were plenty of risks with striking. Even though the police force had been a bit occupied with the trolley strike that had been happening in the past few weeks, there was still the concern of being arrested once the strike got more and more popular. But the boys were determined, so they held their heads up high and continued on. The Newsies' hearts were set on not only ruining the circulation of the World and Journal papers, but also trying to make the two companies go out of business. And so, if you were caught handling the forbidden papers, then you would often be called a scab, then chased and beat up. Be false to the Newsboys Union, you'd get a generous beating. Other tactics they used to stop the spread of the newspapers was attacking the newspaper wagons, such as they did the first day. Now, these acts may seem a bit aggressive, but you have to understand. The newsboys had been living a very unfair life, and now it was finally their chance to get what they wanted. And if you really want something, there are some certain lengths you need to go to. As the strike progressed, the newsies were able to branch out into the Bronx, Brooklyn, and even New Jersey. They were able to convince some of the newsboys to also boycott the World and Journal papers, and they gained many supporters, some that had taken pity on the boys, and some whose cause was relatable to them and supported them.
With all these opinions against him, Pulitzer decided to try some of his own tricks, which didn't end up too well. He then reached out to his representative on the board of Associated Press, Don Seitz. They exchanged information and updates on the strike through memos.
About a week into the strike, there were already 3,000 striking newsies. Now that is a lot of boys. Their tactics had become a bit more aggressive too, drawing more attention from the police force. But as Kid Blink giddily exclaims to a reporter,
We've got the fresh guys on the wagon scared now, and the managers can't find no one to circulate the papers.
strike seemed to have grown more than they thought it would, because the newsies were now supported by workers of all ages.
Seitz even goes to tell Pulitzer in a memo, practically all the boys in New York and in many adjacent towns have quit selling.
The following days found the strike in many newspapers.
A paper from the 24th of July includes a few brief interviews with many different newsies. Crutch Morris said,
We've got every right to win.
and I'm sure many people agreed with that statement. Kid Blink even claims that,
We've got 'em on the run now.
Then, the night of the 24th, the Newsboys had a rally at Irving Hall. At this rally, they displayed autographed letters from the senator, Tim Sullivan, his brother, and many other people who felt sympathy for and supported the newsies. At this rally, too, Kid Blink shared a very motivational speech with his fellow newsies, with some highlights being,
And 10 cents are as good to us as the millionaires. We want it, we'll strike and re-strike until we get it.
He even noted a few times in his speech that they should tone the aggressiveness down, but his main theme woven throughout the speech was about sticking together. After this, the rally proved to be a big success. Many people were on their side now, and everything was going the newsies' way. Until 2 days later. Kid Blink was accused that day of selling the forbidden papers when he was caught with a bundle of them. After being chased through the streets by a bunch of livid newsies, which a lot of people would be if their leader had betrayed them, both he and David Simmons resigned from their posts on the Newsboys strike. This was a huge blow to the strike. Everyone was disappointed. There were a few rumors floating around about newspaper executives bribing them, but no matter what the rumors said, everyone was just upset. After they had gotten over the shock, though, they remembered that it was too late to back down now. They couldn't retreat now after they had worked so hard. So, while Kid Blink's commitment might not have been the best, the other newsies pressed forward on their journey. After much fighting and much protesting, on August 1st, the World and Journal eventually gave in. They didn't roll back their prices, but they agreed to a different type of compromise. At the end of a newsie's workday, whatever papers the newsie had left over could be bought back for full price from the newspapers. Rejoice was in the air. The young newsboys, who no one ever paid a lot of attention to, were now victorious, famous even.
With the support of many others, including their fellow newsboys, they were able to reach their goal through hard work and commitment. Their stand was admired by many, and because of their new fame, many people got to see a glimpse inside the working conditions of many children, and how unfair it was, which only made them admire the newsboys' commitment more. So what? Why am I telling you this? Well, I'd like people to recognize how hard this feat must have been. Small boys against millionaire tycoons? That takes a whole lot of bravery. And also, because of them, in our country, it's uncommon to still see children working day and night over the streets. Sure, newsy careers died down, but what about the other jobs? What happened? Because of the attention the newsies gained, in addition to other events surrounding the mistreatment of children in the workplace, the U.S. put child labor welfare laws in place. Children can't always speak up for themselves and can get taken advantage of easily. Children need a chance to be children, and these laws help protect their youth. Thanks to the bravery and commitment of these young men and women, our nation is now a safer place for children, both in and out of the workplace.